as Senior Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the Philippines. Born in Davao City, Philippines, he was sworn in as a member of the Supreme Court on October 26, 2001, who obtained his law degree from the College of Law of the University of the Philippines, where he graduated valedictorian and cum laude in 1975. He placed 6th in the 1975 bar examinations. He earned his undergraduate degree in economics from Ateneo de Manila University in 1970. In his student days, he was chairman of the editorial board of the Philippine Law Journal of the UP College of Law. He was editor-in-chief of the Bidon, the school paper of Ateneo de Manila University. He also served as managing editor of the Philippine Collegian, the school paper of the University of the Philippines. Fresh out of law school, he went into private practice and founded the Carpio, Villarasa, and Cruz Law Firm. He was a professorial lecturer of the UP College of Law from 1983 until 1992, when President Vidal Ramos appointed him Chief Presidential Legal Counsel with cabinet rank. As such, he worked for major reforms in telecommunications, shipping, civil aviation, and insurance industries. He was a member of the Board of Regents of the University of the Philippines from 1993 to 1998. In 2001, at the age of 52, he was one of the youngest appointees as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. Shortly after his appointment, he launched for the judiciary the Supreme Court e-Library, the first full-text searchable and retrievable online law library in the Philippines and among the first in Asia. He penned 935 decisions, 79 dissenting opinions, 30 concurring opinions, 13 separate opinions, and 4 concurring and dissenting opinions, leaving no backlog in his docket, a feat rarely attained by a Supreme Court magistrate. For his distinguished and exemplary service to the Republic, he was awarded in 1998 the Presidential Medal of Merit by then-President Fidel Ramos. In 1991, he received the Outstanding Achievement Award in Law from the Ateneo de Manila Alumni Association. In 2002, he was also the recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Award from the Ateneo de Davao Alumni Association. In 2009, he was conferred the Doctorate of Laws honoris causa by the Ateneo de Davao University. In 2015, the UP Alumni Association named him Outstanding UP Alumnus in Public International Law. In 2017, the UP Alumni Association again named him one of the 3 most outstanding alumni of the association. In 2020, the University of the Philippines conferred on him the Doctor of Laws honoris causa. He has lectured extensively on the West Philippine Sea issue in various local and international fora. In 2015, the Department of Foreign Affairs sponsored him on a world lecture tour on the West Philippine Sea issue. He presented the Philippines' perspective on the issue before the think tanks and universities in 30 cities covering 17 countries. He published his research and analysis of the West Philippine Sea issue in an e-book titled The South China Sea Dispute, Philippine Sovereign Rights and Jurisdiction in the West Philippine Sea. He was the chair of the 2nd Division of the Supreme Court and chair of the Senate Electoral Tribunal. He retired from the Supreme Court on October 26, 2019, upon reaching the compulsory retirement age of 70. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Justice Antonia T. Carpio.
Pleasant afternoon to everyone. Thank you for inviting me to discuss with you Philippine island territories in the West Philippine Sea. This afternoon, we will answer the question, what are the islands in the West Philippine Sea that are part of Philippine territory under Philippine sovereignty? I'm talking about Bajo de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal and the Kalayaan Island groups in the Spratlys. You will see here the Treaty of Paris lines. Scarborough Shoal is outside the lines. The Spratlys are outside the lines. So why do we say that these islands, Bao de Masinloc and the Spratlys, the KIG, are part of Philippine territory? There is the greatest misconception in Philippine history is that the territory of the Philippines is limited to the islands within the Treaty of Paris lines. That's really the greatest misconception. This is factually, legally, and historically false. And we should correct this. But why is there such a misconception? Well, because our own legal luminaries have perpetuated this misconception. In 2009, former Solicitor General Estelito Mendoza wrote in the Philippine Judicial Academy Journal, that's under the Supreme Court, that the KIG has never been, through the centuries of its existence, been regarded as part of the Philippine archipelago. So he's saying that the Kalayaan Island Group do not form part of Philippine territory. It only became part of Philippine territory in 1978 when PD 5096 was issued. Also, Father Bernas also said, he was a dean of the Attorney Law School. In 2012, he wrote a column in the Inquirer. He said, referring to the KIG and the Scarborough Shoal, we are claiming areas that are outside the lines drawn by the Treaty of Paris. We cannot justify that claim under the treaty law. We have to justify it under general principles of international law. And also, recently, last 2021, Senator Enrile, who is now the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel, said, alam mo, yung Scarborough, hindi sa atin yan. Squatter lang tayo doon. It's outside the Treaty of Paris. So, this has misled a lot of Filipinos and also misled the Chinese. In fact, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who is still the Foreign Minister of China today, in a speech at the CSIS in Washington, D.C., that's the leading think tank, before diplomats from all over the world, he said, Philippine territory is governed by three treaties, the 1898 Treaty of Paris, the 1900 Treaty of Washington, and the treaty with the British demarcating southern Philippines. He said, areas in the west of 118 degrees east longitude do not belong to the Philippines. The Nansha, the Spratlys, the Scarborough Shoal are all in the west of 118 degrees longitude, so they do not form part of Philippine territory. This is the 180 degrees longitude line of the Treaty of Paris. Scarborough Shoal is outside, the Spratlys are outside. He said, see, based on what Filipinos themselves say, the Spratlys and Scarborough Shoal do not belong to the Philippines. This is the greatest misconception in Philippine history, and we must correct this and bury this forever. And we'll do that this afternoon. We start with the 1935 Philippine Constitution, which defines our territory. Philippine territory comprises of the territory ceded to the U.S. by the Treaty of Paris. Okay? Then second, together with all the islands embraced in the treaty concluded in Washington, that's the 1900 treaty. So there you have an idea that Philippine territory is not limited to the islands within the Treaty of Paris, because another treaty says, together with all of the islands embraced in another treaty, and then the treaty with the British demarcating the boundary between southern Philippines and British North Borneo. That's in our Constitution. Now, if you drill down into these treaties, the 1898 Treaty of Paris stated that Spain ceded to the U.S. the archipelago known as the Philippine Islands. the archipelago known as the Philippine Islands, lying within the following line. So the treaty lines. So it's correct, the Treaty of Paris only ceded to the US all the islands within the treaty lines. But when the Americans came here, they found out there were many islands outside. So they went back to the Spaniards and they signed another treaty clarifying that any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines of the Treaty of Paris were also ceded. There was a second treaty, the Treaty of Washington, but we all forgot about this. It's never taught to us. It's only the only treaty that has been taught to us was the Treaty of Paris. And then there is the third treaty with the British, demarcating the boundary, and that treaty defined the Philippine archipelago. The Philippine archipelago, the territory acquired by the US from Spain under the Treaty of Paris of 1898 and under the Treaty of Washington of 1900. So the third treaty defined the Philippine archipelago as the islands ceded to the Philippines under the 1898 Treaty of Paris and the Treaty of Washington. So the question is, what are the islands of the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines of the Treaty of Paris? Because if you look at the map, you will know what are the islands within. There's no question. You will see all the islands within the treaty lines. But what are the islands outside of the treaty lines that were also ceded to the US under the Treaty of Washington of 1900? Where is that document? Where is that map? So we go now to, in any territorial dispute, we always start with a critical date. The critical date is the date when one country claims an island or a territory, another country claims the very same island and territory. So, two states claiming the same territory. That when those claims coincide, that date is the critical date. Why is that date important? Because from that date onwards, whatever the two states do to improve their claim will not matter as far as their title is concerned. As far as the arbitral tribunal is concerned, it will not consider acts done by the claimant states from the date from the critical date onwards. In the Spratlys, when we claim the Spratlys, we put a population in Pag-asa. Pag-asa was not populated, so we brought a population there to say that it's ours, to improve our title. The Chinese, when they claimed the Spratlys, they built air and naval bases from out of nothing. But all of these were done after the critical date, as I will explain. So, if done on or after the critical date, all those acts that improve your title, that enhance your title, do not matter. Why? Because the policy of international law is to prevent the aggravation of the dispute. Once the critical date is established, you must not do anything to aggravate the dispute, because the purpose of international law is to preserve peace and stability in the regions of the world. So, international law will not encourage you to improve your title while the dispute is going on. So, what is the critical date for the Spratlys and Scarborough Shoal dispute? We go to the timeline. 1734, Pedro Murillo Velarde map, Spain claimed the Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys. And then again in the 1808 map, Carta General, all official maps of Philippine territory, 1875. No other country made a competing claim until 1933. In 1933, France claimed the Spratlys on behalf of France itself and not on behalf of its colony in Indochina. But France, after World War II, abandoned its claim. In 1939, Japan seized the Spratlys, established a submarine base in Itoaba. The submarine base was used in the invasion of the Philippines, but when Japan lost the war, so in the San Francisco Peace Conference, Japan renounced its claim to the Spratlys and the Paracels. So we can remove France, we can remove Japan, and in 1947, China claimed the Spratlys for the first time in its history. China is a late claimant, 1947 only, and I will show that. But at the same time, China said the Spratlys are also claimed by the Philippines and by the French in Indochina. And in its 9-9 map, China included Scarborough Shoal as part of its territory, but without a name. In 1947, China still had no name for Scarborough Shoal. So, 1947 is the date when at least two countries claimed the same territory. China claimed it and the Philippines claimed it. And the problem with the Chinese claim is that there's an inherent defect. You can claim an island or a land if it is terra nullius, land that belongs to no one. You can claim it. But when China claimed the Spratlys, it admitted that it had been claimed already by the Philippines. So their claim is defective from the start. So 1947 is the critical date. So anything done on or after 1947 will be irrelevant. All this construction done by China in the Spratlys are all irrelevant as far as the title is concerned, if it is submitted to an international tribunal. Now, what is the importance of the three treaties in the Constitution? They're important because of this principle. Iuti possidetis juris, it means as you possess under the law, stay there. If you look at the map of Africa and Latin America, you will see that the boundaries are drawn in very straight lines. One tribe may live on both sides of the boundary, but they have to, the colonial powers did not mind. They just drew the boundaries on straight lines. So when these countries became independent, there were border wars. To prevent border wars from happening, international developed this principle. As you possess under the law, stay there. Those boundaries, this is iuti possidetis juris principle, those boundaries established by the colonial powers for their colonies, as those colonies became independent, those boundaries are sacrosanct. They cannot be changed without the consent of everybody, all the parties involved. They must be respected by all states. That's the iuti possidetis juris. And this principle applies to the three treaties that define Philippine territory. The three treaties defining Philippine territory, you have the Treaty of Paris between Spain and the US, two colonial powers. The second treaty, the Treaty of Washington between Spain and the US, colonial powers. And the third treaty between the US and the United Kingdom, colonial powers. So the iuti possidetis juris principle applies to these three treaties. The world must respect the boundaries established by the colonial powers under these three treaties. That is a very strong principle under international law that has been repeatedly adopted by the International Court of Justice. So, what are the islands of the Philippine archipelago covered by this iuti possidetis juris? What are the islands constituting the Philippine archipelago? Where is that document or that map? We have to go to the first map showing Philippine territory. Is a 1734 Carta General, 1734 Pedro Murillo Velarde map. This was map a map made by Father Pedro Murillo Velarde, a Jesuit. He made it here in Manila. It was printed here in Manila. And you will see Panapot. That's Scarborough Shoal. The first name of Scarborough Shoal was Panapot. And you have here Los Baos de Paragua. Paragua is the old Spanish name for Palawan. Los Baos is the Spanish term for shoals. The shoals of Palawan. This is how the shoals were depicted by cartographers during that time. So this map showed that the Spaniards claimed the Spratlys and Scarborough Shoal way back in 1734. And this cartouche here, on the right side, is the symbol of the crown of Spain. That means this map is official, because in 1733, King Philip V of Spain ordered Governor Joel Tamon in Manila to make a map of Philippine territory. That's why that is an official map of Philippine territory, the first official map of Philippine territory. Now in 1792, Alessandro Malaspina came to Manila. He was a famous explorer. At that time, there was a race among three countries. UK, the United Kingdom, sent Captain Cook around the world on a scientific expedition to collect specimens of flora and fauna and to chart the British waters. The French sent Leperouse to also go to all the French possessions all over the world. And Spain sent Alessandro Malaspina. And he came to Manila in 1792, and he went to Scarborough Shoal. And he conducted a survey of Scarborough Shoal. How he made depth sounding. This is a plummet, this is a lead, you attach to a thin rope, you drop the lead, and you measure the depth. So he measured the depth of all the areas around Scarborough Shoal to guide navigators so that they will not hit the rocks. Because in 1748, a British sea clipper ship called Scarborough ran aground. It hit the rocks of Scarborough. That's why European cartographers renamed Panapot to Scarborough Shoal. So this guy, Alessandro Malaspina, was in Manila. He went to Scarborough Shoal to make the first hydrographic survey of Scarborough Shoal. 1792, the Chinese didn't even know that there was Scarborough Shoal. And in 1808, Spain published a new map of the Philippines. It's called Carta General del Archipelago Filipino. It was published by the Dirección Hydrografía. That's equivalent to our NAMRIA. We call it a mapping agency, but at that time they called it a charting agency because the principal mode of transportation was by ships. And very strange map, because this is a full map of the Philippines. I will show the second part later. But in Scarborough Shoal, the survey of Malaspina is inserted with depth soundings. But all the rest of the Philippines had no depth soundings. Why? Because the director of this agency, Dirección Hydrografía, was Joseph Espinosa. And he was with Malaspina when Malaspina went to Scarborough Shoal to survey Scarborough Shoal. So when he became director of the charting agency of Spain, he inserted the survey. So this is the complete map, the second part, and it also includes the Spratlys, but not yet complete, because the Spaniards at the time were still making their survey of the Spratlys. Some of the islands were named there already, but not yet complete. And then we come to the 1875 Carta General. This is the Holy Grail map. I call this the Holy Grail map because it's a complete map of Philippine territory. If you ask the question, what are the islands of the Philippine archipelago? You will find it here. This is the map that will show all the islands of the Philippine archipelago during the Spanish regime, and also during the American regime, because the Americans adopted this map. So you will see here Pag-asa, Tito Island. You will see Ituaba. You will see all the islands of the Spratlys are here. I downloaded this high-res copy from the Ministry of Defense of Spain. we do not have a copy of this map. None of our public libraries or museums have a copy of this map, and also our private collectors, I asked around, they don't have a copy. So it's like we have a house and lot, but we don't have a title to our house and lot. Because this one will show all the islands of the Philippine archipelago constituting Philippine territory today. Now, the U.S. adopted this map because when the Americans came here, they did not have a map of the Philippines. So they adopted the best map of the Philippines under the Spanish regime. And this is one of the editions. You will see here, War Department Adjutant's Office, this is 1901. The Americans adopted it 4 times in 4 editions. They only added the military telegraph lines, the cable lines, eastern cable lines, and the military departments. But they adopted the Spanish map in toto to say that this is Philippine territory. So it was issued in 4 editions from 1898 to 1902. So if you look at the Spratlys in this 1875 map, you will see Tito, that's Pag-asa, the largest island that we occupy, about 37 hectares. You will see Loita, that's we call it Kota. It's the 2nd largest island that we occupy. And then you have Ituaba, the largest island, about 47 hectares, that's occupied by Taiwan right now. Now, if you go to Scarborough Shoal, you can see Scarborough Shoal in the map of Father Pedro Murillo Velarde. It's here. The map of 1808, under the directorship of Espinosa, you will see here depth soundings. That's the survey of Malaspina. And the 1875 map, you see here Bao de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal with depth soundings also. China does not have a map like this. China didn't even know that Scarborough Shoal existed until the 1940s. Okay, we go to Calayan Island Group. These are the lines of the KIG, Calayan Group. We used to claim everything here, islands and waters, but that of course went against international law because you can claim only high tide features. If the rock is above water at high tide, that is subject to a claim of sovereignty. Here we claimed everything, even if it was low tide. So we revised our claim in Republic Act 9522, we claimed only the high tide features at 12 nautical mile territorial sea, and that complied with international and UNCLOS. So if you juxtapose it, this is the 1875 map, you have Pag-asa here, you have Pag-asa here, you have Loita here, you have Kota here, and Ituaba is here. So more or less concise, no? And the Vietnamese also made a map, the South China Sea. They also put the KIG lines. So if you compare it, this is Tito Island. Tito is here. You have Loita is here. And then you have Ituaba is here, Ituaba is here. So more or less concise. Now, when in the Treaty of Paris that the Americans and the Spaniards signed, there was actually a map attached to it. When, after the signing, of course, the treaty had to be ratified by the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Constitution. So the text of the treaty was signed, was sent to the U.S. Senate together with this map. Now, if you look at the map, the line in the West Philippine Sea, the lines turn sharply to the left to include the entire Spratlys. All the islands of the Spratlys were here in this map, including here Cagayan de Sulu, Sibuto. So this is the correct map. This is the map that the senators of the US Senate were looking at and said, okay, we approve the treaty. But there was a problem. Okay, the treaty was signed, Spain US paid $20 million. What was transferred, as I mentioned earlier, if there are any, in addition to Mapun Island, in addition to Cagayan de Sulu and Sibuto, all other islands will be included. It says here, other islands outside the limits of the Treaty of Paris are deemed ceded also. So there is now a meeting of the minds. The Americans have always said everything should have been transferred to us. The entire Philippine archipelago, all the islands. But there was a defect in their geographical coordinates. In the Treaty of Washington, the Spaniards accepted it. We accept everything else, all the islands of the Philippine archipelago. So if you look at the Treaty of Washington, it says, Spain relinquishes to the U.S. any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines. Everything else outside the lines, all the islands will be transferred to you. And they are transferred as fully as if they had been expressly included within those lines in 1898. So the transfer retroacted to 1898. But there is something here that those who oppose this narrative is pointing at. It says, any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines were transferred, and particularly to the islands of Cagayan de Sulu and Sibuto. Okay. And particularly, those who are pro-China in the Philippines have said, oh, what was transferred were only Cagayan de Sulu and Sibuto. That's what they're saying now. They did not include Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys. Okay. Why is that wrong? Okay. Why is that wrong? Because the clear intent of the U.S. was all islands of the Philippine archipelago should be transferred. That's why there was a second treaty. In the second treaty, the Treaty of Washington, that was the time when the Spaniards agreed, yes, all. And the Spanish ambassador, in his letter to his superior to Madrid, said, we are transferring everything in the same other islands, including other islands in the same situation as the two now ceded, referring to Cagayan de Sulu and Sibuto. What is the meaning of the phrase, in the same situation as the two now ceded? But that ambassador explained it. That is to say, outside the limits of the Treaty of Paris. In other words, said, islands outside the limits of the Treaty of Paris are also included in addition to the two now ceded, because that's the only way you can interpret it, based on the intention. So, the mention of the phrase in the same situation as the two now ceded was clarified by the same ambassador that those are the islands outside the limits of the Treaty of Paris, other than the two now ceded. Now, under the verbal legis rule of statutory construction, you must apply the plain intent. The plain language must be followed. So the plain language says, any and all islands of the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines. There could be no exception. Any and all islands. It's very clear. But what is the meaning of this when the same provision says, and in particular, and particularly the islands of Cagayan de Sulu and Sibuto? What is the meaning? This is the quarrel now. Those who are pro-China are saying the phrase, particularly the islands of Cagayan and Sibuto, limits the cession to Cagayan de Sulu and Sibuto. But it cannot be. If that is your interpretation, then you totally negate the phrase, any and all islands. The phrase, and particularly Cagayan de Sulu and Sibuto, means, and especially Cagayan de Sulu and Sibuto, because those two islands triggered the dispute because the garrison, the Spanish garrison in those areas refused to vacate. That's why they mentioned it, and particularly. In ordinary parlance, and particularly means and specially. So it does not exclude other islands, because you have to interpret the provisions of a law, of a treaty or a contract to give all this, to give effect and meaning to all the sentences, all the phrases, and all the words. So if you say that and particular means and exclusively to Cagayan de Sulu and Sibuto, you negate the phrase any and all islands. You cannot interpret it that way. You have to give effect to the entire phrase, to the entire paragraph. So, and finally, in 1938, the Commonwealth of the Philippines at that time was run by Filipinos already, and our leaders at the time had a great foresight. They said a country could claim Scarborough Shoal, so let's put something there. Let's put a lighthouse as a marker that belongs to us. But first things first, we have to ask the Americans if Scarborough Shoal is part of Philippine territory, because it's outside the lines of the Treaty of Paris. And Secretary Cardinal said, Scarborough Shoal is part of Philippine territory because of the Treaty of Washington of 1900. So there you are. That's the memorandum of Secretary of State Cardinal, because of the absence of other claims. In 1938, no country other than the Philippines claimed Scarborough Shoal. The shoal should be regarded as among the islands ceded to the U.S. in the Treaty of Washington. Any and all islands lying outside the lines. So that is an application. So it's very clear that the Scarborough Shoal, outside the treaty lines, the U.S. said that's part of the cession of the Treaty of Washington of 1900. So, what was ceded in the Treaty of Washington was not only Cagayan de Sulu or Sibuto, it included Scarborough Shoal and other islands outside the treaty lines. So, so we have this map that we have forgotten, the 1875 Carta General. We don't have a copy of this map, and I'm trying to look for a copy of this map, but I've been unsuccessful so far. So we should have a copy of this, but there is something more. There was this island in the of the coast of Mindanao called Islas Palmas. Islas Palmas was first discovered by the Spaniards, but after discovering it, the Spaniards never went back to the island. They just included it in the map, and it appears in the 1875 map as part of Philippine territory. But the Dutch East Indies Company from Indonesia went there and signed a treaty with the local Datu. There were about 700 people who lived in that island. And the Datu signed a treaty saying, we acknowledge, we recognize the sovereignty of the Netherlands over our island. And it was the Dutch that showed peaceful and continuous sovereignty over the island for the longest time. All the Spaniards did was to discover it, put it in their map, and never went back. So when the American general, at that time Governor General, went there, he saw the Dutch flag flying in that island. He said, that island is ours. How come the Dutch flag is flying there? So he found out that the Dutch had been there for a long time. So there was a dispute. Who owns Islas Palmas? The country that discovered it, Spain, or the country that showed continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty? So there was an arbitration. This is a famous case in international law. There was an arbitration. The arbiter was Max Huber. And I said, in that arbitration, what proof did the Americans present to the arbiter to say that Islas Palmas is part of Philippine territory? I said, they must have submitted the 1875 Carta General. So I said, I have to look for the memorandum of the U.S. because the U.S. submitted a memorandum to Max Huber, the arbiter. But I could not find until I called up Professor J. Patong-Bakal of UP Law Center. I said, Jay, I cannot find this. You may have a copy of this. He said, yes, I have a copy of that because I went to the U.S. National Archives in Maryland. I saw it. I took a picture of the memorandum of the U.S. in that case. And I said, I'm looking for any statement there that the map was submitted. Yes, the map was submitted. So on pages 42 to 43 of the memorandum, the U.S. said, this map, this exhibit, is both an American official and a Spanish official map. This is the map of 1875. So here is a statement by the U.S. in a judicial proceeding that the 1875 map is an official map of Philippine territory under the American regime and the Spanish regime. Well, of course, we lost that arbitration. In the 1875 map, you have Sarangani here in Mindanao, and you have here Islas Palmas. This was the island in dispute, but we don't own that now. It's part of Indonesia because we lost the case. But Max Huber left something for us. He said, this ruling applies because Islas Palmas is inhabited. So if it is inhabited, you must go there to exercise continuously your sovereignty. Continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty to complete your title. So this will not apply if the island is not inhabited. So he made that distinction, but he stopped there. He did not explain it further. In the next case, Clipperton Island case 3 years later, the French annexed Clipperton Island. Clipperton Island off the coast of South America is totally uninhabited and uninhabitable because there's no water there. One day the French went there and then a French naval officer read a proclamation that we are claiming this on behalf of France. This is now part of French territory, and they went to Hawaii, the island with the nearest government. They took out a 2x2-inch advertisement. Today, France claimed Clipperton Island. That was 1858. For 39 years, France never returned to Clipperton Island. It just went there to claim it and then did not return until 1897 when Mexico claimed the island. So there is now a dispute. Two countries claiming the same island. So the dispute was submitted to arbitration by King Emmanuel of Italy. And the ruling was this. Because the island was completely uninhabited. No other claimant. So when France went there, its claim was unopposed. It was terra nullius. Then the title of France was complete. France didn't have to show continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty because that island was uninhabited. Even if France was absent for 39 years, did not return, the title of France was already complete and France could not be divested of that title under international law. So the island was awarded to France. So we go now to another case, Eastern Greenland. In the 1700s, Denmark claimed Eastern Greenland, claimed the entire Greenland, but in the eastern part, Denmark did not put up colonies there because it was very cold. That area, you cannot live there. So Denmark only established colonies on the warmer area on the western side. In 1933, Norway claimed the eastern side because it was not populated, there was nobody there. So the issue was brought to the Permanent Court of International Justice. And the ruling was this. The court said, in the 1700s when Denmark claimed Greenland, although they populated only the warmer areas, not the eastern side, the law does not require them to do the impossible. You are not required to populate an area that cannot be populated because of extreme weather. So when Denmark populated the western side, the claim became complete also with respect to the unpopulated area. So it reinforced the Clipperton case. If the island is uninhabitable, you don't have to inhabit it. The law will not require you to do the impossible. So, because it was impossible for people to live on the eastern side, there was no requirement for Denmark to inhabit it. And the title of Denmark became complete upon discovery, just like in the Clipperton Island case. So we go now to the Spratlys. In 1734, Spain claimed the Spratlys. The Spratlys, according to the Arbitral Award of 2016, the Spratlys, there is no historical record of human habitation. The Spratlys, in fact, the Spratlys is not capable of human habitation because there is no water there. So the Spratlys were uninhabited and uninhabitable in 1734, in 1808, and in 1875. So the title of Spain became complete as of 1734 under the international law. So this is the map that we should always have. Now, the Treaty of Paris said, the Treaty of Washington said, all the islands lying outside the lines of the Treaty of Paris should be deemed comprehended in the cession of the archipelago as fully as if they had been expressly included within those lines in 1898. In other words, the Treaty of Washington retroacted to 1898, the Treaty of 1898. How do you now show that? Do you move, because it retroacted, so do you move the islands within the treaty lines? Because the Treaty of Washington says those islands are considered included as fully as if they've been expressly included within those lines. Do you show this Scarborough Shoal here and the Spratlys here? You cannot. That's against geography. So you have to create another line here to show that under the Treaty of Washington, these islands were included in the cession. This will now complete the story that what was ceded to the Philippines in the Treaty of Paris are within these lines, in the Treaty of Washington within the red lines. That is how we should show Philippine territory. Unfortunately, what is shown only in the internet is this, without the red lines. So it has misled everybody. Now, NABRIA is making a new map of the Philippines. This is it. They've circulated it. They have not finalized it. And you can see here Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys, but they followed here the lines of the Treaty of Paris, and in the legend of the map, they mention all the treaties. Treaty of Paris of 1898. They jumped to the treaty with the British of 1930. They omitted the Treaty of Washington. So I flagged this to them. I said, you will again perpetuate the misconception. You have to include the Treaty of Washington, because if you don't include the Treaty of Washington, how do you explain why we have sovereignty over the Spratlys and Scarborough Shoal and even Cagayan de Sur and Cebu? So I hope they will change that. In the treaty with the British, in the whereas clause, there are two whereases which define Philippine Archipelago. As I mentioned, Philippine Archipelago is a territory ceded in the Treaty of Paris and the Treaty of Washington, November 7, 1900. And the Malaysia inherited British North Borneo from the British. So Malaysia is bound by that definition. Malaysia cannot claim the Spratlys because of that. Malaysia will be bound by the US-UK Treaty of 1930. So, okay. In 1943, China published a handbook to introduce itself to the world, because the Qing dynasty ended in 1912. This is now the Republic of China under Chiang Kai-shek. So they published a handbook, and in chapter 1 they have to define Chinese territory, and they said the southernmost territory of China is Triton Island in the Parasols. 1933, China had not yet claimed the Spratlys and Scarborough Shoal. They cannot debunk this because it's an official publication of the the Republic of China under the Kuomintang. That's the book. And in 1947, China revised the handbook. They now said in their new handbook, the territory of China extends to the Coral Islands, that's the Spratlys, on the south. But it is also contested among China, the Philippines, the colonial Philippines, and the French in Indochina. So this is the, what I said is the critical date. So this is the document which says China, for the first time in its history, claimed the Spratlys only in 1947. Too late, the hero. It was a very late claim. We claimed it in 1734. And they always say that, oh, we claimed that since 2,000 years ago. No, they have no document at all. And this one, because in 1943, they did not claim it. And then they claimed it in 1947. It's very clear that they claimed it for the first time in 1947. So, I'm running out of time, so I will end here. Oh, this one, very important. In the arbitration at The Hague, China did not participate. China said, we are not participating, but this is our position paper. They submitted a position paper, and the tribunal said, we will treat your position paper as your comment or answer. And in that position paper, China said, the Philippines does not own the Spratlys and Scarborough Shoal. Why? Because in their own constitution of 1935, they defined Philippine territory as regulated by three treaties: the Treaty of Washington of 1898, the Treaty of Paris of 1898, the Treaty of Washington of 1900, and the Treaty with the British of 1930. All the islands to the west of 180 degrees do not belong to the Philippines. They said that in their memorandum, that they position paper that they submitted. So, what is that? What is the value of that? That is a judicial admission. The highest form of admission, you cannot get away from that, is if you admit it before a court, before a judicial body. And so China is bound by that. China is bound now by its statement that Philippine territory is also governed by the Treaty of Washington. And if they look only into the text of the Treaty of Washington, they will know that the Treaty of Washington included Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys, any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago. But they were misled. They were misled by our legal luminaries, so I think we should also thank our legal luminaries for that. So China is bound. It cannot get out of that admission. I have here a list of, the last question is, did the Philippines or the U.S. ever abandon its claim to the Spratlys or Scarborough Shoal? There is no abandonment. I went over the timeline. So, recently, when he spoke at Shangri-La a few days ago, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. said, Philippine territory is governed by, as stated in the 1935 Constitution, by the Treaty of Paris, as clarified by the Treaty of Washington. For the first time in Philippine history, a president of the Philippines said that Philippine territory is governed, defined in the Treaty of Paris, as clarified by the Treaty of Washington. That's a marching order to all our embassies and consulates that should be echoed all throughout. And the marching order to the DepEd to state in our history books that Philippine territory is governed by the Treaty of Paris and the Treaty of Washington, which explains why we have sovereignty over Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys. So, what is the conclusion? We should teach everybody that our territory is defined in the Treaty of Paris, the Treaty of Washington, and the treaty with the British. And we should challenge China, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei. On the territorial dispute, let's submit it to arbitration. We are confident. If China believes that it has really sovereignty over the Spratlys, it should accept the challenge. But of course, China will never accept because they know that they started only in 1947. Too late, the hero. So what do? We should bring the issue to the court of world opinion. We should ask our embassies and consulate to spread the word that Philippine territory is governed by these three treaties. That's why we have sovereignty over Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys. I end my presentation here. Thank you for your patience and attention.
Thank you so much, Justice Carpio. May we request to move up the center of the stage as we call on our director, Sanen Matoto, to moderate the open forum. So, klaro-klaro po, atin.
Justice, thank you very much for your speech. Thank you. Well, I think the way we'd like to handle this question and answers, we have until 1:50 is a hard stop, I was just informed, which gives us about 15 minutes for the 10 questions. Perhaps, in interest of time, maybe I could throw the first question, Justice. Is there any other legal venue that we go to beyond those to be able to assert the fact that what China is claiming in their position paper is not factual?
The territorial dispute is separate from the maritime dispute. The maritime dispute was finally settled legally by the July 12, 2016 award. The territorial dispute remains. Unfortunately, we cannot bring it to a tribunal because the tribunal will have no jurisdiction unless the other countries voluntarily submit it also. So we can bring it only if China agrees to submit it to arbitration. And China will never agree because China knows it will lose again. So, as I said, what do? We we bring it to another court, the court of public opinion, world opinion, by explaining it to everyone. It was never submitted to arbitration, but Japan in their website listed all their documents, all the reasons why they own the Senkakus. That's what we should do. Explain everything. Why the Spratlys and Scarborough should form part of Philippine territory. Because we have to change the mindset of the people of the world. Because of our own, some of our people made the wrong narrative. We have to change that. We must be on the same page because we are fighting a huge country, 1.4 billion people, the largest standing army, the largest naval fleet, the largest Coast Guard fleet. We have to be united to win against such a country. Thank you.
Another question related to, I guess, the legalities of the situation. You did mention that there were two legal luminaries, namely Father Bernas and Attorney Mendoza, who came up with different opinions. Would you like to explain to us exactly what was these two luminaries, what was their basis for saying that we did not want it?
Well, I think because I've been asked that question, I said all I can say is that when we were in high school, in grade school, in college, we were only taught the Treaty of Paris. We were not taught about the Treaty of Washington, although it was in the Constitution. I took up law. We took up that provision, but nobody taught us. Our teachers or professors could never explain to us the Treaty of Washington. They just took it for granted that our territory is within the treaty lines. So I think because we did not look into it deeply enough. I cannot also blame these legal luminaries because our historians also did not tell us. But because we are fighting a huge country, we have to use every means that we can find to fight. And we will be strong if we fight legally. Because if we fight them in the ocean, in the sea, in the South China Sea, we are no match. They have the largest naval fleet in the world, the largest Coast Guard. We fight them in a forum where warships, warplanes, bombs do not count, where the judge will only look at the facts and the law, and that's where we will win. And that's exactly why we won in the tribunal at The Hague, because we were strong on the facts and the law. We are also strong here on the territorial dispute. We're strong on the facts and the law. Thank you.
I'm sure in the position paper that China had submitted, you had also been able to review. Other than the reference to, I guess, the erroneous reference to the Treaty of Paris and Washington being the same, was there any other legal basis that they put forward?
No, they're only using the three treaties, citing our own constitution. And they did not submit that only to the arbitration of The Hague. If you go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website of China, you will see the same claim that Philippine territory is governed by their constitution, and there are three treaties regulating, and the Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys are outside. You go to this Chinese embassy website, it says also Philippine territory is regulated by those three treaties.
Thank you. I guess the question really is that apparently the legal revenues, as you've indicated, have been more or less exhausted at this stage. So, what's the end game of this whole exercise?
Well, first we should go through the motion, challenge them officially, so that the world will know that we challenge them, we are sure of our facts, we are sure of our law, and they refuse. And then we come up with our evidence. Because this is a battle for the hearts and minds of the peoples of the world. Right now, the Western world, Japan, South Korea, India, Australia, they're all supporting us in the arbitral award. We need another vehicle to get the support of the world for the territorial dispute, because the arbitral award touches only on the maritime dispute. So we challenge officially China. If China refuses, we bring out all this evidence to convince the world.
Okay, I guess with that, we can open the floor to any questions that anybody may wish to ask.
We have a question here. Scott.
Justice, my question is really, what support are you getting from the Philippine government with respect to these suggestions you're making? I think we understood very clearly what you were saying, and we're behind you, but the Philippine government has to come out openly also and strongly.
Well, I'm doing this on my own, but I'm happy that someone in Malacanang or someone in the DFA is listening to me. So they have echoed what I've been saying, and they were able to put it in the speech of President Marcos before the Shangri-La Forum, that Philippine territory is governed by the Treaty of Paris as clarified by the Treaty of Washington. That is a marching order already. That we should, that the AFA, their embassies, consular offices, and the Department of Education should also put that now in the curriculum from grade school to college. Thank you.
Any other question from the floor?
The only thing I have read about what you said today was your commentary after President Marcos spoke in in Singapore. And before I came here, I thought that I will be listening to something that would back up what you wrote at the time. I hope more people will really put this in writing and spread all over.
Thank you. I uploaded a few days ago a video lecture on this one, the lecture that I gave. Full lecture is uploaded in YouTube, and it's for all students, all Filipinos to watch. And that explains everything. Thank you.
Any other question? Oh, we have another question here.
I guess the unspoken question. I guess Filipinos are really peace-loving people, right? Nation. And then currently, the challenges on the economic side of things is the biggest concern of most Filipinos. On one hand, we hear this news about the conflict with China increasing. There's this fear that, there might be a war, and definitely we are not prepared. On the other hand, there's the practical side of the discussions where economically we cannot also go against China. So have you given it some thought on how the Philippines, how could it best position itself in protecting its claim, but at the same time not creating that concern in the minds of our citizens?
I've always said that we should assert our rights, maritime and territorial rights, in accordance with law, in accordance with the UN Charter. That's why when China seized Scarborough Shoal, we didn't send our Marines to retake Scarborough Shoal. We sent our lawyers to The Hague to invalidate the 9-dash line. And this time, I'm saying, for the territorial dispute, let's challenge China to submit the dispute to arbitration, so that the world will know that we are following the rule of law. Because the UN Charter says all disputes between states must be settled by peaceful means, through negotiation, mediation, arbitration, and any use of force or threat of force is outlawed. It's legal. So we cannot use force or even threat of force. China is using threat of force, but we're not responding. Our soldiers, our Marines are given the instruction, do not use your firearms. That's why when the Chinese boarded their RHIB boats, they did not use their firearms. because we don't want to escalate the dispute. We want to settle this by peaceful means. And that has been the instruction. That's why we're getting water cannon, we get our fingers, the soldiers' fingers are being chopped off, but we still do not retaliate with arms. We want to follow the rule of law. But we have to take advantage of the law quickly. We have to challenge China and change the narrative now in the world. Of course, China also has this three warfare strategy. This is an official doctrine of China, approved with the People's Congress, the Military Commission, up to the Politburo. Under this doctrine, China will win the South China Sea without firing a single shot. How? By intimidating us. China is saying we have the largest standing army in the world, the largest naval fleet, the largest Coast Guard fleet in the world. We have those huge air and naval bases in these battles. You cannot win against us. Submit, accept the 10-dash line as a national boundary. That is how China is moving. That's why that Sierra Madre, PRP Sierra Madre, can be taken by China anytime. It's totally defenseless. Those 12 people there have only long firearms. They don't have cannons. China can take it down anytime. But if they do that, we can invoke the treaty, the Mutual Defense Treaty. And they don't want to escalate. Because if this dispute escalates into a skirmish, it can escalate into a nuclear war. And in a nuclear war, not a single Chinese citizen will survive. Why? China has only 450 to 500 nuclear weapons. Americans have 5,500 nuclear weapons. So in a nuclear war, the entire China mainland will be totally devastated. Not a single Chinese citizen will survive. The U.S. will survive, but there are large areas of the U.S. will also be devastated. So both sides don't want any war. We don't want war also. But China is pushing the envelope to intimidate us. If we get intimidated like Duterte, talo tayo. But we should resist. At the same time, we should develop our legal strategy and implement it fast. Thank you.
Perhaps I could sort of have a follow-up question. I guess I heard you earlier saying that we really can't go to a higher body because unless China decides to participate, we would not be entertained. So where else can we go in terms of the legal options?
Well, I said we go to the court of world opinion, convince everybody in Europe, in North America, in Asia, that we are correct, that China is the bully, that we have the legal arguments, we have the law and the facts on our side, and nobody will side with China. China wants respect. China needs the world to survive. They don't need to import, they need to export, they need also the world. So it has to be friendly with other countries also. It doesn't want to be isolated. So, and China wants respect, to be a model. But we have to highlight that China is a bully. It's a rogue country. It does not follow international law. It does not follow the Arbitral Award. Those are our weapons. But of course, we should also have a credible self-defense force. No country can survive without a credible self-defense force. We should not ignore to maintain a credible self-defense force, and still we don't have today a credible self-defense force. It's expensive, but it's the only way to survive this world. If you forget to have a credible self-defense force, you will be like Ukraine. You will be tested. And it might be too late. And it's a good thing the entire Europe is supporting Ukraine. But can we expect that kind of support from our ASEAN neighbors? No. So we should prepare now. Thank you.
One last question.
Again, Cora.
you see him as a very strong ally in this move? Because he's very articulate. He's also a lawyer like you. And he has spoken quite strongly about the issues with respect to China.
Well, I think it's okay. He's been, so far, he has been strongly assertive of our claim, of our maritime and territorial position. So I don't have any issue with him.
We should encourage him to be more, to speak more about the issues that you brought up here. Is he aware of this?
Yes, he's aware. Yeah, he's aware.
Is he limited?
In fact, he actually said it. We are challenging China to submit this dispute to arbitration.
Oh, okay.
He said it actually.
I think more people who have the means to speak out should come out openly. Yeah.
Actually, I just want to say that this has been very enlightening for me. I wasn't aware of the Treaty of Washington. That has made it very clear. And you mentioned that it's also in the handbook of China that they had included it. So how do we make sure that the world knows that they included it, which is in our favor? Because that's very clear. As you said, that they acknowledge that it is ours based on that treaty.
That is in the arbitral award, the decision of the arbitral tribunal is stated there.
Okay. I have another question. The West Philippine Sea is very rich, and I think it will affect the Philippine economy and our development if we can do something about that. It's possible that China is very protective of the sea because of these rich resources that we have there. Unless this is resolved, is there any way that we can be able to mine this resource, or it's totally out until we resolve this issue? Thank you.
Well, right now, 40% of the energy requirement of Luzon comes from Malampaya. Without Malampaya, we'll have 12 to 14 hours of daily brownout in Luzon. Factories will close, offices will close, schools will close. Locators here will have to move out because they cannot compete. If we have to increase our power rates, they cannot compete with their competitors in China and Vietnam and other areas. So we're running out of gas in Malampaya. The gas now in Malampaya used to supply our 3 largest gas-fired plants. Today, it supplies only 2, maybe end of this year, only 1, and the following year, no more. We have really to develop Reed Bank. That is at least 2 times larger than Malampaya. Malampaya served us for almost 25 years, so we will be assured for at least 50 more years if we consume in the same rate. But our problem is, every time we go to Malampaya, when we send our survey ship, the Chinese drive us away. But recently, Malaysia announced that they need to drill also in their own exclusive economic zone because their reserves are going down. And so they said, we will drill. And they sent their ship, drilling ship and survey ship, together with their navy. The Chinese said, there will be war, you cannot do that. But the American warships and Australian warships conducted naval drills at the same time. So the Chinese Coast Guard couldn't do anything. So that Malaysians were able to complete their survey and drilling. Up to today, the Chinese are just outside the area, but the Malaysians keep on getting the gas. The same thing happened with Indonesia. Indonesia announced it would survey and drill in the Natunas. The Chinese said that's within the 10-dash line, you cannot do that. But the Indonesians still sent their drill and survey ship. and at the same time accompanied by their Navy, and the U.S. aircraft carrier Ronald Reagan was there, happened to pass by. So the Chinese Coast Guard couldn't do anything. The Indonesians completed their survey and drilling. But during this period, Duterte was the president, and he refused to send. He placed a moratorium on Forum Energy. You cannot go there because there will be war, it will be a massacre, so we never sent our survey and drill ship. But today, we are preparing to send our survey and drill ship, and we have joint patrols with the U.S. already off the coast of Palawan, and it will reach Reed Bank. By the time it goes to Reed Bank, I expect our survey and drill ship will be there. We have to get the gas in Reed Bank. We have no choice. If we don't get the gas, we import LNG, our power rates will go up by as much as 50%. It will be terrible. Inflation will shoot up, power rates will shoot up, there will be strikes. It will be terrible. We have to get the gas in Reed Bank. And it has to happen soon because it takes 4 years to develop the gas field. And we will run out of gas completely, gas from Alampaya maybe by 2027. That's the expected date. So there will be a period where we have to completely import LNG to feed our gas-fired plants. But as long as we know that we are developing Reed Bank, the people will be willing to wait. But if there is no light at the end of the tunnel, then people will start to worry. What's the future here? So we really have to start the survey and drilling in the Reed Bank now. I understand they're about to do it. Thank you.
Last na po pahabol na.
I was just going to ask, just for a follow-up, is it the Philippine government that will initiate the move of the Reed Bank, or will this involve the private sector investors?
Well, the government has awarded the concession, Service Contract 72, to Forum Energy that is owned by the group of Manny Pangilinan. They have, in fact, twice contracted the survey and drill ship. But every time after contracting it, Duterte would say, moratorium, moratorium. So they're fed up. But this time, they have already contracted another survey and drill ship to go there. I think they're just waiting for the right moment when we have joint patrol in that area. We have to do it, because if we don't do it, we will really suffer.
Okay, so with that, thank you so much, Justice Scorpio, for enlightening us today with your talk. Thank you also to Vin Matoto for excellently moderating this open forum. At this point, we request VP Joey to join us on stage as we award Justice Scorpio our token of appreciation. Another round of applause for Justice Scorpio. And
thank you for attending. This meeting is officially adjourned.